how did I get to this place where I'm training other people, trying to help them to be more physically active, physically fit, capable of doing their activities of daily living, get stronger, more functional? How did I get to this point? Well, let's go back in time. I know I haven't shared a lot of this stuff. I haven't probably shared any of it. If you don't go to my website, you'll never read the bio. But my website is someplace where you can go and you can see the bio, longevitycpt.com. You can check it out there. But I'm going to tell it to you in the video format because, hey man, it's YouTube. What else we got to do here, right? Besides give you training tips and nutrition tips, I want to give you some information about me so that you know where I'm coming from and my history. So in 1982, my family lived in Saudi Arabia. Rocky 3 had come out, Clubber Lang, Mr. T, and Sylvester Stallone, but also Carl Weathers. And I don't know, Carl Weathers, rest in peace. That guy was just a physical, he was a physical specimen, you know. Played football, played for the Oakland Raiders, which, you know, I'm still a Raiders fan. And he had these deltoids. The dude was ripped. He was cut. I was 10 years old. I was a little fat kid. I loved donuts. I loved Twinkies. You name it. I was eating all the junk. And I never was told no. So I ate it and I loved it. Sodas. So here I was, a 10-year-old little fat kid. And now let me say this too. When you're a little fat kid, don't be discouraged because you haven't hit puberty yet. And things change with puberty. And then you can also change your nutrition at that point as well, and get things back on track for yourself so that you progress into adulthood and you can be a healthier version of you. All right, enough of that rant. So, 1982, I was watching, you know, I loved Rocky 1, I saw that, and then I watched Rocky 2, of course, and then here we are, we got Rocky 3. And watching that, I went, man, I want to get muscular. I want to get in shape like that, man. I thought, and it wasn't Sylvester Stallone, which is funny because I have Italian background. My family's, you know, got Italian and German, and I'm 26% Italian. And I thought, people will think it's funny. I wasn't really down with Sylvester Stallone, but I thought Carl Weathers was the man. And Mr. T, of course, that dude was built as well. And I went, gosh, I want to get built like that. I want those muscles. So my dad, I said, hey, you know, Dad, this is really cool. I would like to get in shape like those guys. So my dad bought me a Joe Weider weight set. Now, it was a standard weight set. It was 110 pounds. It was these cool gold-looking, gold-plated weights, standard bar. And back then, I don't know if everybody here remembers, but if you're older like me, then you do remember the benches that these standard weight sets came with were these benches that had like uprights that were only probably as wide as my shoulders. If you were a grown man, you could barely fit your shoulders through that. So when you put the standard bar on there, if you took one weight off of one side, that thing would go flying. And so you had to be very careful. And as a young kid, I didn't know anything. And of course, my dad wasn't really a weight lifter. That wasn't his thing. He was a marathon runner. So I think both of us were kind of learning as we went at that point. But this weight set, all of a sudden it was, you know, got me into this fitness mode and I loved it. So my friends would come over, we would weight train, we would do our bench presses, we would do our shoulder presses. We got some dumbbells that you had to tighten down with these collars. They would always come off and the weight plates would go flying. Everybody would get almost injured. They'd fall. The floors in the house there in Saudi Arabia were made out of marble tile. And so you would have to be careful because you could crack those floors. And we would do our lateral raises. We were like, yeah, we're gonna get those shoulders and everything. No, I didn't get them yet, but and I'm still working towards it. I don't know if I'll ever get those, but that was the spark that got me thinking of fitness. And then, of course, back in the 80s, and I don't think they do it anymore, but we used to have these field days for PE. It would basically be a competition. The school would, you would sign up for it, you'd have a team maybe, and you would get into these competitions where you would do all these fitness-related activities or physical education-related activities. They would have things to do with speed, agility, and quickness, broad jumping, things like that, pull-ups, push-ups, stuff that were calisthenic-related, and loved it. And so me and my crew, back then, again, this is the 80s, so breakdancing was a big thing, and me and my crew, we got our team shirts. I had my dad, he's like, I'll get them for you guys. So we had these red muscle shirts. It was the 80s. And we had our little names on there. They weren't our real names. They were our little street names. And we went in, we kicked ass, had a great time. But that was where I really got my passion for fitness. And but I was young. And so this was from about 10 to say 13 years old. Fast forward, I'm in high school, freshman year. I want to play basketball. I'm only about 5'9" at the time, and maybe 130 pounds when I started my freshman year. But I loved fitness, and I loved the conditioning side of it. So I was in basketball conditioning, a lot of running, a lot of sprinting, and a lot of scrimmaging. Then we got into the weight room, started enjoying that again, and I really realized I loved the weight training more than anything else. So that year I started being, my freshman year, I wasn't really strong, but I wasn't really big either. So I was 5'9", like I said, 130, 135 pounds. I could bench press my body weight. So I was bench pressing 135 pounds for reps. And I could jump pretty well at that point. For 5'9", I was able to get up and get onto the rim. So I thought, I'm 5'9", I'm already grabbing rim with two hands and snapping that thing back. I'll be dunking soon. I'll be dunking before I know it. Fast forward, I don't dunk. I also topped out at a 6'2", and then I do not dunk. I jump okay, but yeah, I'm just not that good. So, but I really loved the training again. And then we changed high schools, and I came to a new school, got here in Benicia, and finished Benicia High. Loved the weight training again. I had gone from being a freshman at 5'9", 135, and then over the summer came back 6'1" and about 220. It wasn't a pretty 220 either. I loved eating still, I had still had those bad eating habits from when I was a little kid, so I would go and kill a large pizza all by myself. Probably drove my parents crazy. I would, and I was a latchkey kid, so I'd be home and I would just be killing whatever I wanted to. Wasn't good. I wasn't healthy. Football coaches thought that was where I should have been heading, not basketball. And basketball wasn't a thing that I ended up doing anyway. But I still stuck with the weight training, and I ended up dropping down the weight. And then I went into the Coast Guard. And when I was in the Coast Guard, I went in there. I was in good shape. Came out a little too thin, in my opinion. But we did a lot of calisthenics, a lot less eating, and our meals were scheduled. So my weight went from, I think when I went in the Coast Guard, I was probably 190, somewhere in the 190s. And then I came out and I was about $180 and very thin, lost a lot. But then I put that back on because that's what you do, right? And I still wasn't really eating properly when left to my own eating schedule. So my habits weren't good. And I didn't understand nutrition at all. But I did understand weight training already. I understood it. I was pretty good at it. And back then, you read all the bodybuilding magazines, all this and that. And you would pick up your workouts through that avenue because there was no internet yet. And there wasn't, message boards and all these things. People weren't sharing. So unless you went to the gym or you worked out with people in the know, you weren't really knowing anything new other than looking at the magazines and going, oh, okay, this guy's using this set. And it was always the same kind of workout though. And then they had a few shows on and you could learn a few different exercises and aerobic type of training and things like that. And you incorporated the things you learned during your physical education too in school. So I go in the Coast Guard, go through that training, had a great time, went to my unit, and then I was on a ship and we were gone for 297 days, I believe it was, out of the year. So we were underway or gone from our home port for a long time. And when you're underway on a ship, especially a Coast Guard cutter, this was a 378-foot cutter, so it was a large cutter, but it was still very unstable in the water. You would get a lot of roll, a lot of pitch. Try lifting free weights when you're getting a lot of roll and a lot of pitch. You have to everything's got to be perfect. The force changes every time the boat goes up or down or side to side, and you can really injure yourself. So it's a great place for calisthenics, not a great place for strength training with weights. Although we did still do it, we had to be careful. And there wasn't a whole lot for your legs, funny enough, right? Didn't want to ruin those sea legs. So then I get stationed on a land station in Hawaii, and that's where, again, I was sparked with my love. I was like, oh man, this is great. And the wellness programs were in full effect at this point. So the government realized, hey, we need our troops to have wellness programs so they understand healthy eating, healthy exercise, and mental health. So we were getting involved in that. This was the beginnings of it, though. So this was very new. This was in 1994. And now, of course, the internet's also coming around, right? We got dial-up modems, all that crap. And you could get on the internet, and there was message boards, but it took a long time to get any information. So still not great. And you still get most of it from literature, books written. I remember one of my favorite books back then was Power Builder, and that was by Dr. Fred Hatfield. And he was one of the first people to squat 1,000 pounds, at least that it was recorded. And Dr. Hatfield had great information on the body, the muscular system, and strength system, and how you would go about programming at that point. And of course, things have changed. And I feel very fortunate that I'm still doing this and involved in this at this point, because this is the best time as far as our information and studies go to be involved in the fitness industry. But it is the worst time to also be involved in the fitness industry because there's so much misinformation and so many trainers out there trying to overcomplicate or make things fancy for the internet that don't need to be. They overcomplicate things. They make people intimidated by showing them all these advanced movements. And I'm going to tell you something too. All the different modalities, most of them do the same thing as a basic modality. But we get tied into, ooh, this is the new thing, right? This is so sexy. I want to do this one. Do you need to? Probably not. You can probably keep it very basic for the general population and get the results you're looking for. Anyway, so there I am in the Coast Guard. I'm in Hawaii. Life is great. I'm on the island of Oahu. I'm a telecommunications specialist, a radio man, and we live up on the area of Wahiawa. And so we could have a short drive down to the North Shore, and it was awesome. You could get done with your work, go down there, hang out at the beach, enjoy it, go down to the gym, like to go down and work out at Pearl Harbor. And I made friends with some really top level power lifters. Tony Liotto, this other guy, I don't remember his whole name, but Leon Madkins. He used to go by Leon Mad Dog Madkins. He was an Army guy. Tony was in the Coast Guard. Tony was a world-class power lifter. And look him up. He's got records on the internet from when he was younger. They used to have to, I don't know if this was actually true. We'd have to ask him. But they said that Tony used to take 2 regular shirts and have to have them sewn together because he had a 20-inch neck. And he's a Samoan, 275 pounds. I think Tony went about 275 and he was 5'10", I believe. Impressive strength. Watched him at the Hawaiian Strongman. He did reps with 315 for 28. It was crazy. The guy was a bench press specialist. And he would just put people to shame. But such a nice guy, very humble guy, great guy, and still is, and still strong. But anyway, I started learning from these guys too on a whole different level. So I was always into the bodybuilding style workouts, the isolation, and powerlifting was more about more progressive overload, and really more scientific at that point in my mind. So bodybuilding, you did more reps, more hypertrophy, and you tried to progressively overload as well because you do want to get stronger. But powerlifting was more light, lower reps, lower number of reps, 1 to 5, and more sets sometimes, around 5 sets. So bodybuilding at the time, the traditional one was like a 3 to 4, maybe a warm up and then 3 real working sets. And powerlifting was more of a 5 set, and you took a lot more time between your sets too. They would take anywhere from like 2 minutes to 4 minutes before they would get under the bar again, or get under the bar. Excuse me about that. So learn from these guys, and then I took that and I became the wellness rep for my unit. So they sent me to Dallas, Texas. I went through some certification with Cooper's Institute for Aerobic Research back then. The Cooper's Institute itself still exists, but they don't do certifications from what I know. Cooper was the father of aerobics. Dr. Kenneth Cooper, father of aerobics. And back then in the early 90s, it was all about aerobic training. And the way they talked about nutrition was different too. Now we like to prioritize protein. We realize protein is probably the first thing you should prioritize, then your carbs and fat. Back then it was carbohydrates and it was a high amount of carbohydrates. I'm gonna try to get my recall, but I want to say it could be up to 65% of your diet was carbohydrate back then. And so I feel kind of bad about this, because when I used to talk about things to my crew, I would talk to them about, hey, let's get these complex carbohydrates. And I didn't really hit on protein much. But even back then, we should have been keying in on that and talking about a gram per pound of body weight. It just makes more sense. And the research now backs that up. But anyway, Dr. Kenneth Cooper, great certification at the time. And I took that. And so now I'm certified trainer. It's 1994. I go back, I design the gym for the unit, get it all built, and with some help from other people as well, not just me. My buddy Rick Forbes, he's a retired coastie, and he and I really worked hard on that. And also just what equipment needed, what equipment was needed, mirrors, you name it, dumbbells, treadmills, universal machine, functional type trainer, the whole thing. So we put that gym together, and really everyone embraced it. It was awesome. Okay, but now I need to make a change in my career path, so I go to the California Highway Patrol. Only because I wasn't getting what I wanted out of the Coast Guard. I was taking exams to promote, and every time I would be in the top like 20 of everybody who took it, but I would never get promoted because they were actually promoting nobody in my rating. So it was time for me to make a change. I had to either decide, hey, am I going to stick this out for, another enlistment and maybe not even promote, or do I do something different? I said, I'm going to do something different. Went to the California Highway Patrol. I go to the California Highway Patrol, and here we go again, back through another boot camp. 6 months, live-in academy, tough as hell at the time. And fitness kind of fell off a little bit. Now, not because I was in the academy, because that's very fitness forward, if you will. I mean, we were working out, we would get up and have to be in the gym. There were so many people going through this class during my time that we would be in the gym around 5 a.m. and we were working out fasted. And then you're also, again, strictly, you're eating on a schedule, and you're not snacking. And at the time, they didn't allow you to have food in your dorm. So you didn't have food in your dorm room. So you weren't snacking all the time, unless you got a liberty, you got to leave on Wednesdays or on the weekends, then you could go ahead and get crazy. But if you were there, man, you were eating your 3 meals, and you better eat good, because you're burning all those calories. So again, I went into the academy, I think I was 205, and I left around actually only lost a few pounds. I didn't lose a lot that time, because I made sure when I was eating, I would pound down that food. But I go into, then you go out to the field, right? Now you're an officer. There's a lot of stress that goes with that. And with stress usually comes stress eating, and not a lot of time to take for yourself. And you're young, and I'm starting a little family, right? I have my wife at the time, and then we have a kid coming, and there's just priorities that were different. So my fitness, although I kept going to the gym, I didn't pay attention to my nutrition, which seems to be my MO, right? I never pay attention to my nutrition, but now I do. So I'm not paying attention to my nutrition, but I am working out a lot, because, one thing about being an officer, you better look good and like you can handle yourself, because if you look like a sack of potatoes out there in your uniform, you're already telling somebody they can go ahead and challenge you, because you don't even take care of yourself. You look like trash. So take care of yourself. And that's one thing I try to do. I always try to maintain my fitness. But along the way, then I started to break down. My low back started to give me problems. I ended up with a torn meniscus and a worn out left knee. And a lot of that's from planting and twisting on that knee. I don't know if it's just getting in and out of the car, getting up and down, genetics, getting older, sports, all that stuff. And I know it all plays a factor. So the knee was worn out. I ended up bone on bone with my left knee. They had to go in and do a meniscus repair while I was working. And I think that was around 2016. And so they did 2016, 2017, something like that. And did a meniscus repair, but also had to do a microfracture procedure. So that was a lengthy recovery. Couldn't put any weight on the leg for about 7 weeks, and then started my physical therapy to get that back. Anyway, during that time, between 2017 and 2019, I also suffered my first back injury, which is really weird, because I always thought I had a very strong back. But I turned at the waist, felt like my spine dislocated. I fell to the ground, couldn't get up, needed some help. didn't get proper care, didn't get an x-ray, didn't get an MRI. They wouldn't do any of that stuff for me. And they just said, just deal with the pain. Okay, well, I'm too young to retire at that point. I need to keep working. So I do deal with the pain, and I take Motrin, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to take that forever. But I was taking Motrin, and I moved along, promoted to sergeant, went to Oakland where I finished up my career. And while I was in Oakland, my back started giving me problems again as far as back spasms. It was always in pain because it never got treated, but it gave me back spasms. And then those back spasms ended up retiring me, getting me retired, because they found out that I had problems with the L4, L5, S1, bone spurs, root nerves that were contacting the bone spurs, stenosis squeezing off those root nerves, just all kinds of problems. And they didn't want to do surgery. They said it was a bad idea, and told me I would never be able to wear the gun belt or get in and out of the car in a safe manner. And so my career was kaput. Now I was 50 years old, and at the time at the California Highway Patrol, you could retire at 50. And so that's what I did. I was out the door. But now I've been spending all this time, and I always was kind of, quasi fit the whole time. I don't want to say I was super fit, because I took a period where I was not doing much of anything. I was just working, and I didn't really worry about it. I'd get on the treadmill here and there, but I tried to keep my weight somewhat in control, but it ballooned up to 245 at one point. Had to take it back down to 200, and then it got about 210 before I retired, 210, 215, and then I brought it back down because the back, they said, take some weight off. So I took a lot of time, worked on my back, did all the PT, the strengthening, and I ended up rehabbing from a second knee operation. So my meniscus tore again, and I had to go in and have another meniscus repair. Now, I do my own physical therapy, and I'm thinking, you know what, I need to start training other people. I get retired, and that's my focus. Go back into what I love to begin with, the training, the helping others. That was the thing I liked about being a highway patrolman. That was the thing I liked about being in the Coast Guard. I'm helping others most of the time. And it just gives you that feeling of satisfaction. So that's what brought me here. And then, of course, I went ahead and got a nutrition coaching certification as well to add to that. And I love golf, and I still love golf. And so I also have a golf specialization. So those are my focuses: help people get a little more functional, help them with improving in their golf game through fitness, help them get just healthier with their habits, teach good habits, not shortcuts, but habits that last a lifetime and that can get you through to a nice long life, right? That's what we want. So that's what my focus has been, and that's how I got to where I am. And hopefully that gives you guys some information about me, and you kind of know where I'm coming from in my background. And I know it's been a long video. And if you actually watch this whole thing, and I bet most people don't, but if you did, thanks. Like and subscribe.